Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 11th class in the advanced level. We have a lot to talk about dealing with busyness, schedules, and probably patience. Although the chapter doesn't call it that, I think there's a lot of allusions to patience. So we're going to look at that. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. All right. We have a lot to cover here in terms of words, and I'm going to give you some of my thoughts on the grammar and the verbs in particular. So let's begin. There'll be more reading later, so I thought that we don't need to cover all of it. But what I have done is I've taken the time to highlight words or phrases that I think are A, interesting, B, popular or useful, and C, ones you probably don't know, or most of you, or maybe some of you don't know. So let's go ahead and talk about them. So to squeeze, let me just see to squeeze. So here we have trying to squeeze friends and family, work and fitness into our lifestyles. So when you squeeze someone or something into your schedule, you make time to meet them. Even if you're too busy, I'll squeeze you in tomorrow morning. That means, honestly, I don't have time, but I'm going to make time. I will push a few meetings forward or back, and I will squeeze you in between these meetings. We use this with time. If you have a jam-packed schedule or day or week, it means it's so very busy. So if there's another use of this jam-packed is when you are traveling and you are packing your luggage, your suitcases. If it's jam-packed full of clothes, that means you can barely close it. It's so full of clothes, it's jam-packed. Your schedule can also be jam-packed. Oh my God, it's jam-packed tomorrow. Can we meet in 2 days? And then this word you don't see very often. You see here busyness. We see business a lot, but we don't see busyness very often. So let me just write them next to each other. Obviously, you've seen business before, but they're very similar, except that very odd looking Y. And it does look very odd because we don't see the word busyness very often. And in fact, we don't say it very much, but it exists. And I think it's something that a lot of us deal with. We are very busy, especially those who are in business and teaching. And if you have families, I think that includes nearly everyone listening to me. Save one or two. Now, did you hear what I did? I said save one or two of you. Now, save is very interesting. Now, most people would say except one or two, but you can also say save. So I think everyone here is busy. Save one or two of you, except for one or two of you. All right, let's move on to down below here. I think we have something interesting to ward off. So they're talking about warding off dementia. Warding off means keeping at bay. Keeping at bay is quite interesting. So let's go ahead and try to, I'm going to write that down. Keeping at bay. If you keep something at bay, it doesn't grow or it keeps its distance. It's not getting closer to you. So if you keep cancer at bay, or if it's in remission, so cancer is actually in remission sometimes, but if you keep anything at bay or ward it off, you sort of shoo it away, you make it go away. If you shoo, you often shoo flies, shoo. If flies are buzzing around you, you can shoo them away. Shoo. It's informal, obviously, but that's what we say. So warding off, and the verb has a very common noun equivalent or sort of same etymology. It's a warden. So you have a wardens of hospitals or prisons, and these are generally administrative managers of these institutions, and they're called wardens. You can have wardens in politics. I think in England there are wards. We have districts in the US and precincts, and in England they have wards. And there are, if you have wards, you obviously have wardens. There are also wardens in other hospitals. I don't know if I mentioned that, but there are hospitals or wardens of hospitals. All right. So we're going to do grammar. We're going to look at grammar and the concept of distancing. Now that requires a bit of explanation. If you put distance between you and someone, you are less intimate. You don't share as much. There's some distance between us now. If you are running a race and the leader puts distance between him and the rest of the pack or those runners in the group behind him, that means if you put more distance between you and the others, you're pulling away. Your lead is getting bigger. All right, but we're looking at a grammatical issue of distance, which means you are sort of providing space between what you're saying and yourself. You're not tying yourself to that opinion or fact so very closely. And we'll talk about it here. Jon Kabat-Zinn is considered to be the father of mindfulness. So that is distant because you're saying some people consider him the father. If you would say Mr. Zinn is the father, that means it's a fact and or you believe it. But if you're not sure because either you don't believe it or you don't know enough about the subject, then you can say is considered. Claims, he claims to be. I don't know if it's true or not, but he claims to be. It appears, meaning, at first glance, it seems or it appears that this is the case. Now, I'm going to state something quite controversial, but I hold it quite close, near and dear to my heart, and that is, I believe if you want to sound more intelligent, not only sound more intelligent, be more accurate as well. If you want to be more accurate in your conversations, you need to use the verbs and the verbal constructs in this lesson. And let me explain why. Because oftentimes people will present things as fact when in fact they don't know if it's true or not. They've heard it, but they can't verify it. But people just sort of randomly, blindly, wildly assume it's fact. So, I heard he murdered someone. Well, he's been charged, but that doesn't mean he's guilty. So, you can use these words like it appears, it seems like he committed murder, or it's been reported that he murdered someone. That means someone said it. I don't know if it's true, because I don't know enough about the case. So here's my point. I appreciate people who use these words because it tells me that they've thought enough about it to say, I can't prove it. I'm not certain in my own mind. Therefore, I can't, proffer it to you. Proffer is a big word. I can't proffer it to you as fact. Let me just write that word down. Proffer it. You proffer is to give, offer. Their offer is in there, but you proffer something to someone. So in this case, facts, information. All right. Now, I was going to say something else, and it just slipped my mind. There was something more about this distancing. Yeah, so I lose a bit of credibility when people state things as fact when in fact we don't know if it's true or not. So I much prefer someone who offers a more sort of lower key idea, less confident in their ideas. That for me is a sign of intelligence, because they're anticipating my question, how do you know that to be true? And then they're going to say, well, I don't, I just heard it. And then suddenly you have to backtrack. Backtrack's a great word. You have to backtrack on what you just said. If you backtrack on something, it means you go back and say, well, I said he murdered someone, but in fact, he's only charged with murdering. We don't know if it's true or not. So that's when you have to backtrack and say, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I misspoke. I think that's how we say it. Or is it that? I'm not sure. It's one or two S's, excuse me. You can look that up and tell me. All right, so we have a lot of words we can use here. Yeah, all right. So let's go ahead and look at some of these. It appears, I'm going to read these here for us. It appears or seems that when older people stay busy, they are in fact much healthier. It appears because science says so, but I'm either not convinced 100% or I don't know enough about gerontology or the aging of people. The new head of department seems or appears to be quite friendly. Now you would say that this is, I think, a very astute comment. I'm going to write astute down because that's a nice word. It's an astute comment in that you've met the head one time or maybe twice for a total of 30 seconds. You've passed them in the hall, you've said yes, or you've said hello, how's your day, nice to meet you, or he's greeted you, he's new. So you don't have a lot of evidence to go by. So if you would say the head of the department is very friendly, you're operating on a very limited sample of evidence. But what I think is more accurate and more honest is he appears to be quite friendly. Why do you think he appears? Well, in our first two brief encounters, nice words here, brief encounters in the hall, he was very cheerful. It would appear that Mr. Young had been using the company's assets to pay off his private debts. That's what's been charged. And speaking of that, if we look, we're going to just sort of look ahead a bit. A lot of this we find in reporting or articles, any sort of news reporting, you're going to find a lot of this language. But I would suggest we can use it for our own purposes, even though we're not journalists, because sometimes it's more accurate. So we often use seem or appear without stating that we definitely know it is true. So we give information, but we're not 100% sure it's true. We use it would seem, it would appear that. Also very nice. Again, it's more formal than it seems. So it would seem is the most formal sort of way to suggest, well, that's what's been reported. There's a few ways we can say this. It's not, they don't mention these in the chapter, but I really like these. It's been reported, maybe they have reported. It's been reported that, you know, he sold his company. He purportedly, now this is a great word, I love using this. It's like reportedly. He purportedly stole money from the company. So it's often negative, not 100%, I don't think, but often negative. And it's like reported. Purportedly means he's been accused of this, but we don't know if it's true yet. He purportedly, or purportedly he stole, often it's found at the beginning of the sentence. He stole money from the company. I like using these words. Purportedly, I use quite a bit in my academic writing, actually. All right. Now let's move down a little bit before I let you get on with the homework. It is said that using a wash machine, yeah, you normally would not hear this in everyday conversation. So you might hear it in a speech, you might hear it in reporting, but you rarely hear it, although it's perfectly fine to say. It's it'd be a little bit quaint if you do that, but it is, I think, very nice. It has been announced. This is very reported. This is very much of a reporting style. It's been reported. Is it the company director number 2 is expected to resign? You often hear this type of language in a news report or in an article. The missing couple are understood to have been living. Again, this is reporting. There are thought to be over 1,000 species. All right. Nice language here. And there's nothing wrong with using it in daily conversation, although you want to be careful how much you use it. Formal writing, distancing, like what we've been talking about, is a common feature or a distinguishing feature of formal writing. And so if you're doing anything formal, then this page is important for you. I'll have a writing class coming up, but we don't talk much about writing here, but this is important page if you want to improve your formal writing. All right, now you've got homework here on the right side, the right-hand column, and we're going to move back up to the grammar. All right, I'm not going to go over this much, but football are linked to match fixing. If you fix a match, you cheat. You organize. If you're playing, you try to manipulate the score. If you're outside the game, you're paying someone playing the game to manipulate the score. So that's called match fixing. And sometimes referees or umpires are involved in match fixing scandals. Anyway, C is optional. I won't ask you to do it, but if you have time, obviously do it. It's I think all of these exercises are interesting and helpful, but I want to make sure that you finish everything. Now, listening part 5, I think is super interesting. So 5.2, you're going to hear a series of circumstances or situations, 8 to be precise. And what they're going to do is, here are the situations, the reason you're waiting, and you're going to match them with the number of minutes or seconds that, you know, apply to each of these 8. And it's really interesting. And I think what's going to be super interesting is when we talk about it, perhaps during the live, to understand how long in your country or you personally do you wait before getting annoyed or angry. I'm going to draw your attention to 2 words or phrases in the queue or in a queue. A queue is used in the UK. In America, it's only line. In a line at the coffee shops, you have a line. We never use queue. In Britain, they use both queue and line, or they know both. If you would ask where the queue is in America, they would answer right after P. Number 7, a blind date is not someone who's literally blind. It's someone who, it's when 2 people meet and they've never met before. It's been arranged and they meet for the first time on a date. That's a blind date. Sometimes your friends set you up on a blind date. They have a friend, they know you, and they set you up. You 2 have never met, but you both know your friend. You have that person in common, is how we say that. All right, you're going to listen to 5.2. Very interesting listening here. D, you can listen again. This is tone now and subjectivity, opinion. It comes out quite clearly, I think. And then you're going to look at some American English expressions that Sam uses. What is the usual British word or phrase? I think this is really interesting. So if you get a chance, do it and we can talk about it. It's also found, if you don't know the answers, it should be found in the answer key at the very bottom of this PDF file. All right, we're going to move to vocabulary and expressions. Vocabulary expressions with time, and you're going to listen to 5.3 and you can do that. We're going to move to 167, the time expressions. So you have a lot here that honestly I don't need to do much of the teaching, but I want to tell you this because, well, in the modern age and with the advent of clocks, actually with the advent of clocks on a popular level, because early on, do you know how at least Western culture kept time? They kept time with the local church, which was always positioned in the center of the town. And you knew it was a certain time because they would ring the bell, and that signified the start of church in many cases. And so that was a that was the clock back in the Middle Ages. Now, we start developing clocks in the early modern periods of the even earlier, but 1600s, but they don't become mass produced until the Industrial Revolution. So after 1850, it's not uncommon to have some sort of timepiece at home. And then in the 19th century, we start wearing watches. And why do I mention that long or give a long discourse background information? It's because time and these verbs and phrases and expressions have become popular after the advent means the invention, after the advent of watches, because suddenly now we pay attention to the time. We're very focused on the time. Don't be late. So because of that, we have created a lot of new language related to time. So this is a very important page. Please give it your undivided attention. If you give it your undivided attention, it means you're focused. So stay focused on this, because native speakers use a lot of these. I've gone through them. They're very popular. And focus on the ones you don't remember. Of course, there'll be a test in 2 weeks, but focus on the ones you don't know, and then try to use them in the speaking when you have speaking opportunities, because I guarantee you, we do it a lot. And so it's very helpful to know. I have 2 that aren't on here that I'll just mention. So it's break time. I don't think they're here, but if you have break time, it means you're taking a break from work, or if you're playing a basketball or a game or a sports match, you say break time and you just take time out. And time out is like this. It's a little bit similar. Time out means let's take a break. So you can call time out. You can expand that to have a timeout in relationships. We need a timeout. We just need to take some time away and cool down. So timeout can be used in a variety of ways. This is great. I think you're going to enjoy this one, because, as I mentioned again, these phrases are so common in the English language. So take them seriously and revise the ones you miss. All right. We're going to go back here to expressions. You've got a few more in D. We've got D here if you want to do them. And then we have pronunciation. And this is really, I like this one. And I think most of us speak like this naturally. We're at a very high levels. I think a lot of us pronounce or say sentences in the way that they've already suggested, with a sort of linking of certain words together, but practice it to make sure. And then there's very helpful box here, linking in fast speech. And basically what they're saying is pretty common sense, but things you wouldn't automatically know. And that is times when you link the last sound of one word and the beginning sound of the next word. And you do it with a consonant followed by a vowel. I met him a long time ago. I met him a long time ago. Long time ago. So we have 2 vowels. We don't hear the E, they just elide, they merge, elide, E-L-I-D-E, a long time ago, time ago. Now here we have 2 consonants. It's often the DT. Sometimes here we have the D, the DT, and the Z or ZS. Have a good time. Do you notice we don't hear the D? A good time. We just barely touch it, and we mainly hear the T. So T and D's merge into one basic sound. Have a good time, everybody. And then, please sit down. Sit down. They make a mistake here. Please sit down. You have 2 here, but sit down. Please. So please sit down. That's the ZS, but also the TD at the end. Sit down. So basically, you hear the D. All right. Very interesting. And finally, we have an R sound. So quarter of, an hour. So the rule here is a word ending with a silent R or RE. You link to the next. So quarter of an hour. All right. Also at the end, beginning and end, we have this phenomenon. You can practice those with the particular listening or audio files. And you've got a lot of homework to do. I think it's very interesting. This is a very interesting, not only language exercise, but speaking exercise. So when you work in the speaking clubs or with your speaking partners, and I hope you are doing that on a weekly basis, there's a lot to talk about with time. And you can take a look here at some of the questions and ask about schedules. Ask about your feelings right here when someone's late. Does it depend on the situation? I can say for me personally, I am extra sensitive at restaurants. I don't like waiting, especially if I know there's no reason to wait. I can be patient in many instances, but this is one, ironically, where I'm not very patient. All right. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the lesson, and I will speak to you very soon. Bye-bye.